This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where, look, we got a lot to get to. It is a Monday. That means we're going to give you Poll Assassin, looking at some of the changes in the new AP Top 25 poll in the wake of a very, very busy and impactful weekend in college football. We'll give you the latest update from some of the best individual performers in our fantasy update, including our Hellman's Stack of the Week. And then, of course, we go under the hood upon further review with some of the late night notes. It wasn't exactly a thorough and detailed LSU-Ole Miss recap on the Instant Reaction show, as it was sort of parsed in between the rest of the show with, oh God, we're going to overtime. Oh my gosh, they did it. And of course, one final update on how home teams perform. Drive to 325, lots to get to upon further review. But I had a comment here from Ryan, and given Oregon was one of the stars of the weekend, I thought I'd bring this to the table to get us rolling. Ryan says, I'm surprised to see Oregon fourth in the odds board to win the national championship. Took some plus 600. Don't love Lanning's in-game decisions, but they have the tools to win it all. I'm sure we'll have a lot more, coming out of that. But Danny, throw this to you first. Do you look at Oregon when you're trying to pick your national championship to winning team? We're at the mid-season point. We're going to do a lot of second chance, mid-season, pick your team to win the title. How does Oregon sort of fit into that for you?
As somebody who picked them in the preseason to win the national championship, I am not backing off. I mean, is today the day you're looking to potentially say they're not? I keep going back to, so when you're looking at it, I think you want to see injury luck, right? You got to stay pretty lucky, healthily. Now, with Jordan Birch out for that game, that was a huge loss for them, and they were able to win without him, and losing Trayshawn Holden to the spitting incident for the majority of the game. I actually feel really good about where Oregon sits right now. You have to have a dude who's a baller at quarterback. Clearly, Dylan Gabriel is that, a guy who rises to the occasion. And the Dan Lanning's in-game decisions, that's one I hadn't heard today after that game, because I thought he outcoached Ryan Day.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with Dan Lanning's in-game decisions. Some aren't going to work out, but I think what he is doing is backed up by math, and it's kind of similar in a lot of ways to the criticism that baseball managers took for bunting 30 years ago. And now if you play like you did 30 years ago as a baseball manager, you are going to get fired. So not that every single call he makes is correct, but I bet you he's probably plus EV on those decisions in terms of what the actual expected value of the decision is before the play is made or not made. I mean, they just won by there's a lot of, would we have different analysis on this if
Ohio State had kicked the field goal to win the game?
Yeah, right. Would we have a real different opinion? So basically, do we think Oregon's a better team than Ohio State? They just won by 2 at home in an atmosphere that is probably worth 3.5, 4 as far as home field. So I think if anything, we think hey, they're a little better than we thought they were. Maybe Ohio State has some more weaknesses, obviously, with the loss of Josh Simmons. Part of your decision matrix here is going to have to be, what is the chance that the loser of the Big Ten title game, if it is Oregon, gets that 5 seed? Because that has to kind of factor in, I think, to your decision-making process here. Because the 5 seed, I don't buy into the idea that it's better than getting the 1 seed. Personally, I know some people who do. That's fine. But the 5 seed is certainly a lot better.
It's not fine. Don't give
them that.
All right.
It's not fine at all. It's dumb is what it is.
It's way better than
for the money.
What do you mean?
Like for the getting a home field for a home
No,
playoff
because you get to
game?
play the 12 seed, which is probably going to be a team you're going to beat by 40, and then you get the 4 seed in
And
the
you get
second
the
round.
4.
But
So
they
you're-
in
conveniently,
today's
they
day.
conveniently ignore that even if you have a 90% chance of beating the 12 seed, you still have to play the game and beat them, and there's still that chance that you won't. So winning one game is easier than winning 2. But anyways, back to your original point, Bud.
So the 5 seed is way, way more advantageous than like the 6 seed or the 7 seed. So part of this, like if you want to take Oregon 600, I think like implicit in that is the idea they get the 5 seed or the 1 seed, right? Because I don't think 600 is good value if they get the 6 or 7 seed.
Sure. I got that. Do you believe, do you think that the 12 men on the field was on purpose?
Yes.
We didn't have, okay.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that on the Instant Reaction Show?
We did.
Yeah.
Dude, we went almost 2 hours, bro.
I know. That's exactly. I was telling my neighbor yesterday. I was like, you finish it. You've done like an hour 45, and you're like, what did we just say? I don't know. You know, just
I don't remember a damn thing.
I don't remember a damn thing. I asked Mikey when we got done. I said, Mikey, I hope that was good. It was a big day. We had a lot of listeners. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, Oregon very much in the mix for all of the like highest honors, the Heisman Trophy, the national championship, that coming out of a thunderous win. And also did like I felt like there was some Autzen Stadium appreciation, you know, like a lot of the videos from people that were there, a lot of people talking about the experience, Ohio State fans who had made the trip. You know, you could see during the game all the red in the stands and having those fans talk about what an amazing setting it was. So definitely cool to see coming out of the weekend.
The cool part about Autzen, at least that's different, because yes, it's loud, but I think the thing that makes it loud is, you know, you'll go to other places and they have like their chants and their songs that they play. Oregon fans just scream the entire game. First down, second down, third down, fourth down. They're screaming the entire time. So like the noise never goes away. That's what makes it so difficult when you're a road team.
Do you think Ryan Day, Dan Lanning could be the new Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day? It could be, because they're kind of like, Lanning is not afraid. I mean, his reaction after, I mean, when he looked like he was ready to run through a brick wall, I mean, it
names like Garrett Blunt.
That's exactly. It was like, get out of his way. Like, thank goodness. I don't know. I mean, and the players just seemed chippy. Like both of them had, you know, a lot of fuel to the fire that, you know, I'm sure had been stirred up in the pregame, you know, meetings and motivational films and all the stuff they watch, you know, the highlight reels before the game. I just thought that potentially could be something that's brewing, and I'm here for it because it's awesome.
I do think that those are going to be the 2 premier programs in the conference for a while. So they're going to have a lot of meetings like that one that are going to determine, you know, conference titles, conference title appearances, playoff spots, and that kind of stuff. So there's definitely going to be a lot to it, but I don't know if I'm ready to give him Jim Harbaugh status yet, because Michigan was just beating the shit out of Ohio State the last few years. Ohio State was, again, a Will Howard slide away from possibly winning the game.
Also, the exorcism of demons for Michigan after the losing streak made all of that, you know, even more just sort of like,
I mean, yeah, there's the whole rivalry aspect to it too, that you can't replicate. But I do think it's kind of like, you know, Alabama, Auburn, the Iron Bowl was always the premier, you know, it's a great rivalry. It'll never go away. But there were years and even, you know, 5 years periods where you had Alabama, LSU was the game. You know, now it's turning to Alabama, Georgia potentially. I just think this could become the thing in the Big Ten for the foreseeable future.
Rivalries based on excellence can end up being even more fun than the rivalries that are based on history, because what does that 19-year-old remember about, you know, like all the storybook endings from you know, decades ago? But they sure remember what happened last season or the season before in the Big Ten title game, all those kinds of things. So yeah, I like that, Danny. I like that theory a lot. Let's keep throwing something on there. Maybe we get a little maybe we do get that Oregon Ohio State rematch in Indianapolis.
The other problem, though, is like that assumes Ryan Day doesn't get fired, Danny, because Ohio State fans want him fired now.
That's right.
Because anytime Ohio State loses a big game, they got to fire Ryan Day.
The other thing, too, I just want to defend Will Howard a little bit, because, I mean, he's getting absolutely roasted by a lot of people. You know, oh, how could he do that? How could he not know that? It's It's not easy. It's not like it's the Olympics when you have like such a lead and you can look up at the scoreboard and see who's behind you. I mean, you have to be aware of so many different things. And I think he knew what he wanted to do. He just lost track of time by a split second. And everyone, we talk about the internal play clock that has to be in every quarterback's head. It was a blunder that I wish he could have back, but I actually feel better about Will Howard after that game than going into it.
We talked about it Saturday night. Like, he played very well overall, but at the end of the game, he made some decisions that suggested he was kind of rattled by the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Every single Monday, we like to take a look at some of the changes in the AP Top 25 poll. We like to call it Poll Assassin. Goodbye, Utah. Goodbye, Oklahoma. And hello, finally, Army and Navy. That's right. Our Service Academy rivals have made an appearance in the AP Top 25 poll. Army moving in to number 23 after a thrashing of UAB. Navy didn't even have to set sail. And they were able to just scoot on up as the AP voters have decided to shuffle things around a little bit. Disappointed Vanderbilt wasn't able to get in there ahead of Michigan. I think Vanderbilt's got better wins than the Michigan Wolverines do. But, who's to say? Everyone's got their own flavor. They are just 16 voting points away from breaking into the top 25. Notable movement within the top 25. Ole Miss takes a 9-spot drop all the way down from inside the top 10 to number 18 after the loss to LSU. And LSU's up in the top 10, now checking in at number 8. We go Texas holds on to 1 as we predicted on Saturday night. 56 first place votes. 6 first place votes going to the Oregon Ducks. Penn State at 3, Ohio State at 4. Tom, anything from the AP Top 25 poll stand out to you?
There's one ballot that stands out to me.
Oh, yes, there is.
Call them out.
Are we talking about the same one?
I don't know. We'll find out. There's just one I would like to hear an explanation for it, because Oregon got 6 first place votes, and then it got a whole, I can't do the math in my head real quick. It got a whole lot of second place votes. It got 1 third place vote from Pete Yanity of WSPA in Spartanburg, South Carolina. He loves 2 things: his wonderful family and covering sports. And he also loves Penn State, because he's got Penn State at number 2, which I could, if you think Texas is number 3, even then I'd still be like, I don't agree with it. But I don't know what you've done or seen from Penn State to put them above Oregon after Oregon just beat Ohio State. Like, Penn State's best win right now is Illinois, which I know that is the huge win because Illinois is incredible, the best team in the country. But how you can look at how Penn State has played compared to how Oregon has played, and then compare their resumes, and then have Penn State ahead of Oregon, I am not quite sure. So I'd like to see if the 3 of you have any kind of explanation you think for it.
Not really. I mean, that's yeah.
Did he make a mistake? Like, or is he just hate Oregon? Like, is he like an Adidas guy and he just has a death wish against Nike and he wants nothing to do with it? I don't understand what's going on here.
You'd have to go back and say they struggled against Idaho in week 1. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's
because even Penn State had the Bowling Green game, which was down.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is, other than you just say, I think they're better. That's always the out, But even that, if they squared off, I think Oregon would be the favorite.
I know Oregon would be the favorite. Yeah, I mean, like, let those 2 teams play on a neutral. Oregon would be the betting favorite over Penn State. Oregon's, I don't have a lot of, I don't have a lot there. Bud, anything stand out to you?
So I think about this, right? And who wins and loses games has to matter. But at the same time, like, USC is unranked, and I'm not arguing that they should be above LSU, because they shouldn't, because the wins and losses do have to matter. But if you kind of think about this, right, they've both played a bunch of really, really close games against a challenging schedule, and USC is like just kind of -2 on some coin flips. But like, the one coin flip they actually won was a game they beat LSU. And I just don't think there's like that big of a gap. Like, LSU 8, USC unranked. If these teams played tomorrow, I mean, what's the spread? Like a field goal, maybe 4? Like, it's not a touchdown. And we already saw this game happen once this year. Now, USC's lost some players. Obviously, LSU has as well. We can debate if Perkins actually helped the defense by going out because they played pretty damn good against Ole Miss, I thought, without him. It just kind of shows the absurdity of the polling process at times. I mean, like, they've both played a really challenging schedule. They've both played a bunch of like close games. And the South Carolina win is basically the same to me as like losing like close at Minnesota. You know, like kind of two teams that are somewhere between like 30 and 45-ish in your power ratings. It goes down to the wire. Cool. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with it, but it just kind of struck me as like, wait a second. USC beat this team. They've made like both just played a bunch of coin flips since.
I think it's really tough to have in this on October the 13th. It is very tough which is when the ballots were turned in. It's really tough to put a 3-loss team in your top 25.
I'm not arguing for it. I'm just saying,
right. But I think that's like you want to know how it happens. It happens when even if you're losing coin flips, you are on the losing end of those coin flips. You know, so I think that a 1-3 start to Big Ten play makes that week 1 result like even further from the voters' mind. In the same way that getting like choked out by Georgia in week 1 is slipping further away from the voters' minds when it comes to what they're doing with Clemson. So, you know, those week 1 non-conference results, I think as you start to build out more of a body of work and start to play competitive teams on a sort of week in, week out basis, like there's not a USC played really well to get that game to overtime, but it's another example of coming on like the opposite end of a coin flip.
Okay, so that was question. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to say this. I think we know your answer, but here's a good question from Brandon in the chat. Who's the most fraudulent team in the top 10? I think we know
Georgia?
Bud's.
LSU.
Ooh.
Who do you say?
Is it Georgia?
What are we defining fraudulent? Like what is the fraud? What is the fraud being committed here? Like, is it that they're really not a top 10 caliber team? Like, you're not playing like a top 10 team?
Oh no, it's as loose as possible. In the words of Tony Barnhart, he said he was like, "We college football, like we like things," and he paused. He goes, "Flexible." You know,
I would say, don't you think fraudulent is the team least likely to finish the season in the top 10? That's how I would determine it. Like, and that's how I would look at it, which isn't how I do it because I'm not projecting, but I would say that's the most fraudulent. Like, there's no way they'll be there at the end of the season.
Then I would take it.
LSU.
Yeah, LSU, especially right now. You look at that team and the way I could see there being 3 losses at the end of the year for sure. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. But from a power rating standpoint, when I look at the top 10 teams right now, is Iowa State favored against any of them?
No.
Then I think. I like Iowa State. They're a good team, but it's hard to imagine they're going to stick around in the top 10.
Who else or who in the top 25 period has 2 wins over current top 25 teams? And 0 losses.
Lost one.
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
0 losses.
Oh, but 0 losses.
Oh, BYU?
BYU is about 5 spots too low. They have wins over SMU and Kansas State, both current top 25 teams. And this is one of the things that bothers me about perception and brand bias that goes in there. Like we were just talking about LSU. And maybe if they did play, you'd probably see LSU favored in that one. But I think BYU, you have to do twice as much as everybody else in front of you. And I was, Indiana is an example, but they don't have quite the resume that BYU does. They've kind of played some teams that aren't in the top 25. They've been dominant and they've been awesome. And if you did, comparative, you did head to head and whose win's more impressive, best win is more impressive. There's some other teams on here that you could go and you could say Indiana's underranked too, but they just have to prove it twice as long. And it bothers me every time.
I want BYU in the playoffs so bad. We all have our biases, but you will have me percentages level more excited about the 12-team playoff if BYU makes the 12-team playoff. So I'm glad that I can actually come honest with this. Like, that is my bias. I just think it would be sweet if BYU was in the playoff. There's going to be a feature running on CBSSports.com later this week, part of our mid-season package, where we get a second chance to game it all out. And you're damn right I put BYU in that playoff because I am speaking this thing into existence. They might need like pick sixes in every single game from here on out. But you know what? I think they can do it.
But like for programs that never can get there, like remember when Mississippi State was number one? Like they'll always, I just saw Dan Mullen say something about that. He's like, we were 10 years ago, we came out ranked number one. And like they were never a legit national title contender, and they got that. And Ole Miss was 3. And like BYU hasn't been in this territory in a long time. And here they are. Like, and if they lose, then drop them as 15 spots, whatever you want to do. I just feel like they deserve to be better. The other one I looked at, are you at all surprised Ohio State is ahead of Georgia?
No.
Are you ready to have your brain broken? At the CBS Sports 134, Ohio State's ahead of Penn State. Ohio State 3, Penn State 4. Average ranking on all the ballots across CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports voters, average ranking Ohio State 4.0, Penn State 4.1. So not only is Ohio State finishing just ahead of Penn State, but their average ranking is 4th, meaning that you've got like multiple teams that are up there ahead of those two.
Yeah, Ohio State was still 3rd on my ballot.
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I hand in that,
So we're just forgetting about Georgia's win against Clemson, which looks better and better and better.
You don't want to know where Georgia is on my ballot then.
I mean,
it's ahead of Clemson, I'll give you that.
I mean, I had to shove Georgia down. I had to shove Georgia to the side. I mean, I just had to push them. Like that was Mississippi State backup quarterback moving the ball on you is concerning.
That is true.
My ballot for the CBS 134 is not opinion based. It's just my ratings that are, that I do that are based on actual games and don't have any bias of preseason X, blah, blah, blah. Georgia's 15th on mine. Clemson's 16th. Like Georgia has not been dominant. It's been good, but it has not been dominant.
Georgia haters. Don't let us become a
who's 2?
Podcast.
Texas is 1. You know who's number 2? Indiana.
There you go.
Okay.
Now we're talking.
Let's go. Let's go.
Back against that.
All right.
So this is based only on games played so far this year. Then.
Yep. And the strength of schedule is based on the teams in the actual rating system. It's not based on anything outside of it. So that's how I do all 134. I'm not going to sit there and just try to be like, who do I think's the 42nd best team and who's the 43rd?
Hey, I do, okay? But I stop after 50. I do not think about the 74th versus the 75th, but I feel like I can do top 50. But all right, coming up on the other side, taking a look at some of the best individual performances from the weekend and how they benefited us, some of the top quarterback receiver duos from the weekend, and upon further review, next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. And if you were following along, you know that we got a competition going on the side. It is a ruthless competition, and it is the Cover 3 Fantasy League. Let's bring to the spotlight some of the action from the weekend and some of the individuals that helped us get there. All right, so first we've got a real nail biter as Bud got out in front and held off Tom. Bud, let's who stands out to you from this 211-200 victory against Tom?
Carson Beck without Colby Young, 36-48, 459, 3 tutties is not bad. A lot of these guys kind of saved their team this weekend. Dylan Sampson was basically the only guy doing anything for that Tennessee offense. This really came down to whether Giddens didn't play in the last part of this Colorado versus Kansas State game, which was kind of wild. I don't know if he got hurt or something, but they were having Edwards in there, Dylan Edwards, the guy who was at Colorado last year. And what was kind of nuts is like, can you guys run the ball to end this game against Colorado? And they just like, nope, we're going to chuck it around a bunch. And it really didn't work, kind of, but they ended up holding off on defense anyway. So I definitely had to sweat that down the stretch. If that had gone to overtime with Giddens not playing. I think Tom clips me.
I'm just shocked that Carson Beck transferred to Ohio State. We never mentioned it on the show. I needed a bigger day from Jeremiah Smith. He just didn't have enough one-handed touchdown catches. I would have won if Will Howard, because that was a pretty good stack for me that kept me in it. Avery Johnson brought me back late at night with Chase Brown, but just, didn't get enough from the rest of my guys. My running backs were disappointing. They've been disappointing all season.
Got to do better in that scouting process. The running backs count too in the fantasy world. It's important. All right. I went head to head against Danny, and oh man, it was a slaughter.
Wagon.
Danny, what other, other than Tyler Warren?
Tyler Warren, are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. Shador was awesome, even though in the loss and even though he was sacked and running for his life all night long. He's a stat churning machine out there. Tyler Warren was unbelievable, as you mentioned. And then my Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart finally pays off for Evan Stewart to come out of nowhere with the best game that he's had maybe in his career. That's probably been his best game in his career ever. So huge.
I got too cocky. We should have done better, because on Friday night when Cam Scatterbo was out there going absolutely bananas against Utah's defense, that was it was like Scatterbo, and then they had the linebacker who had the 2 interceptions and a whole bunch of tackles for loss. Arizona State vibes absolutely through the roof right there, but not enough as now my hold on first place is in jeopardy thanks to a really, really big weekend from Danny.
The Evan Stewart stat line reminds me, Ryan Day's catching a lot of heat. Will Howard's catching a lot of heat. Ohio State fans may want to, I don't want to get, never mind. Maybe pay some more attention to how Denzel Burke played on Saturday night, because I feel like he had far more to do with the loss than Will Howard and Ryan Day did.
Pass defense, certainly. All right. And now it's time for the Hellman's Stacks segment, where we discuss the quarterback and wide receiver duos that caught our attention over the weekend. Brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. May your game face be as vicious as your buffalo chicken dip is delicious. And we did want to go back to that game. We did want to go to Danny's stack. Dylan Gabriel, 341 yards and 2 touchdowns, with 149 of those yards coming on 7 receptions to Evan Stewart. Danny, when we've been looking at Gabriel to really sort of have that breakout moment, we've been looking at Stewart to have that breakout moment. Do you feel like Will Stein maybe even had some things that he was sort of keeping on lock so that he would be able to really uncork this against the best defense they've played?
For sure. Stretching the field vertically clearly was a priority for theirs. I also thought Dylan Gabriel was phenomenal, improvising a couple times, just sliding in the pocket, buying a little bit of time. And I do wonder if this Evan Stewart breakout game comes if Trayshawn Holden stays in the game. Sometimes you get opportunity because somebody goes down and you discover something. I think that's going to add some depth to this wide receiving core that is huge. So, yeah, I think Will Stein absolutely held back a couple things.
Yeah. Trayshawn Holden ejected for the spitting incident. Gary Bryant Jr. wasn't able to go out there and play. Evan Stewart, somebody who we've had high hopes for ever since he was a high school prospect, really answering the call. He and his teammate, his quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, our stack of the weekend. And this has been the Hellman's Stacks segment, brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Just like these quarterback and wide receiver duos, tailgate snacking and Hellman's mayonnaise make the perfect combo, bringing out the rich and creamy taste to all your game day dishes. So give it a try, and may your game day be delicious with Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Shop at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store and add some extra deliciousness to your game day dishes this football season. Well, coming up on the other side, we go under the hood with more notes from Week 7 fallout and spinning it ahead to Week 8. All that and more next.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
one of the great things about the way we have set up the Cover 3 podcast. We go live, we go raw on Saturday night. Then we get a chance to sort of decompress, take some things in, see some of the action that we didn't get to see, and we bring it to you upon further review. There were terrible calls. Do we want to go ahead and jump in?
After further review. After further review.
After further review.
All right, Danny, where do you want to take us?
What do we think Kirby Smart's going to get for shoving the opponent's quarterback, Michael Van Buren?
He might be forced to sit a series.
Is that what it's? But we've had, because I did not see him apologize yet. He said he didn't remember. I clearly don't think it was intentional. It's not like he went out seeking the quarterback.
Right.
But we had 2 basketball coaches last year suspended for contact with an opponent. I mean, it was pretty. Do you think Sankey does anything? Not before Texas. This is like his worst nightmare.
No.
Yeah, probably not.
There's got to be a fine, though, or at the very least, don't you? I mean, because here's the thing what bothers me. We hold players to such a standard where you have to keep your cool. And Trayshawn Holden lost it for a minute and spit in somebody's face. He could say, I don't remember that. I just blacked out. Like, I don't remember that. And that's essentially where Kirby's going with like, hey, I thought I was going after somebody. And again, I think it did. But we hold players to a standard. I think we need to hold the coaches to as well. I just thought it was interesting. It's kind of, no one said anything. No one's addressed it. I'm sure Sankey just wants to get on with the week and have nobody notice it. But I do think there should be some sort of penalty, at the very least fine him, some sort of punishment.
Probably a reprimand or something.
Yeah.
I would think. The one difference is like basketball players aren't wearing pads,
Right.
and football players are. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he said, sorry, I thought it was my own player.
Right.
I mean,
Maybe that's the thing though. Like, if the defense is he didn't know it was the Mississippi State quarterback, then who did he think it was? His player, one of his assistant coaches, an official? Who's it okay for him to run and shove out of the way because he's mad? Like,
Right.
what's the excuse for it? Because he clearly, it's not like he bumped into him. He hit them and then his arms pushed out. He pushed him out of his damn way. So it's like, I didn't realize it was the other team. I thought it was one of my guys. I'm allowed to shove them.
he thought it was a defensive staffer, and he was furious with what was happening. He saw the jersey, and he thought it was the polo, and he decided to. I mean, you should have seen what he actually did to the defensive staff in the locker room. I mean, it was way worse than that. I mean, yes, a $10,000 fine. I mean,
something.
probably something. Reprimand and a $10,000 fine, and some double secret probation. I don't see. I did not see enough targeted maliciousness for him to miss time as head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Right.
Does that seem fair?
I think so, because it was unintentional. Like, I do not think he was trying to hit somebody or hit another player. That's where he gets a pass. But it's, again, I don't think a lot of players mean to do things during games that they don't get a pass,
Yep. That's absolutely fair. Anything from
another show costs.
anything for the late night action, Kansas State, Colorado. We didn't really get to talk about that much. We were giving it some some commentary as the show was going on. What do we think? I think I saw a comment from the tailgate. Here we go. What did he say? Matt jumped in about an hour before we got started. How about some flowers for my boy Avery Johnson? Consider this. He throws a terrible interception, then decides to make Danny Kanell proud by responding with a 50-yard dime to win the game. I mean, it was a good way to respond. What do we think of the Wildcats' victory?
Avery was dropping bombs all night. He had to leave the game for a while to do so.
Oh my gosh. I thought Shedeur played really well overall. Like some of the size of the sacks was a concern, like the losing 13 yards and 17 yards and whatnot. Those are oftentimes drive killers, but he actually played enough to where they weren't always drive killers, which is pretty impressive. I just thought he really operated well. Travis Hunter went out in this game. Jimmy Horn went out in this game and didn't return. And Omarion Miller, was Omarion or Draylon? I think it was Omarion Miller, because Draylon stayed in. he also got hurt, and I thought like got rolled up on. So I thought he played really well.
I mean, for me, it looked like the Colorado game we've seen 50 times in the last 2 years, where like the one thing, like if you'd watched Colorado this season, the defense, it's still not great, but it has been better than what we saw last year, where it was just putrid. And particularly, I thought their run defense had been better this year. That game against Kansas State, I thought, was their worst performance as a run defense on the season. They were bad in that game, and they were getting run the hell over. DJ Giddens had 182 yards on 25 carries, and he was never touched before the line of scrimmage. Like, if you look at both of these teams in this game, 10 sacks and 10 tackles for loss. No other play resulted in a negative yardage gain except for the sacks. But defensively, I thought Colorado was bad, and it was very much the Shedeur Travis, while he was healthy, save us. And Shedeur played pretty well, and he just didn't play well enough to beat Kansas State by himself.
Did you think the pass interference call was correct or not? I guess not.
I have never thought a pass interference call was correct in my life. I hate the rule.
The non-call?
Yeah, the non-call.
Yeah, I thought it was probably correct because the ball looked to be like out of bounds, but maybe it wasn't so far over there on the sideline.
I thought it was pretty. I actually prefer not when you're throwing it to him, but when you're watching a game, I actually prefer when they let him get a little more physical. And I thought it was just a pretty good physical interaction where the defender started to lose his feet a little bit, and they were like tangled. It wasn't. I didn't think it was egregious. I know some Colorado fans were very upset about that. I could have seen it called pass interference, but I'm okay with it not being called.
Too much gray area with pass interference. Call holding or call illegal contact. Forget pass interference. Yeah. Another takeaway from this game, too, which is a trend on the Kansas State side. Like, we saw what happened to Avery Johnson when they went on the road against BYU. BYU blitzed a lot, completely disrupted it. Avery Johnson's getting blitzed a whole hell of a lot more in every game since, including in this game. Colorado blitzed a lot. So clearly defenses are thinking that's a weakness of his because when he's under pressure, he makes bad decisions. But that was one of the more impressive things about Avery in this game, is that he wasn't making bad decisions even when pressured. He had a very good game. So I think if you're Kansas State, like, that BYU game was concerning. There were moments where Avery's looked bad and you were like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work going forward. But I feel like I'm more confident that this is a team that could get to the Big 12 title game and could end up being the Big 12 champion based on what I saw, because that was a tough environment. It was a tough situation. Avery was clearly something wrong with him, and they were able to overcome it and get the win. So I feel pretty good about Kansas State coming out of that win.
I will say I think Deion's done a better job of this for the most part this year. I did not like midway through the second quarter punting 4th and 1 from your own 45 when you have the best player on the field and a defense that has not played well to start the night. Just my opinion, but you only got 10 possessions in this game total. Mm-hmm. I think you kind of need to try to make like every single one of those.
Bud, you want to do drive to 325?
Let's do this thing.
All right. Because, oh boy, for the second time in the 2024 season,
juggernaut,
we got ourselves a 40 burger. Bud, take us through what we've got and what we have left to do for Iowa to hit 325 this season.
Yeah. So Washington, we thought 30 might be a little aggressive. No, 40 was what Iowa got. They are really, really on pace to hit 325. Need 30 this weekend at Michigan State. Need 24 hosting Northwestern, 17 hosting Wisconsin, 28 at UCLA, 27 at Maryland, and then 17 hosting Nebraska. I mean, guys, they just keep hitting these numbers. Impressive.
I'm telling you,
we're pretty close, I think, to retiring the segment, to be honest. I think like if they go hang like a 50 this weekend, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if they didn't make this.
Yeah, I think they can get 40 on Michigan State. I think they can get 40 on UCLA. I mean,
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Grant and the tailgate time to drive 325 for Oklahoma.
Wow.
I mean,
Oklahoma, like
there are a few teams you could do it for that have.
It's a real cursed monkey paw situation with Oklahoma, where when Lincoln was there, they're like, I wish we had a defense. And it's like, okay, I'm going to take away your offense, though.
That seems to be the sentiment from a lot of Oklahoma fans, was like, okay, we weren't going to win the game, but could we at least have been like a little bit more competitive, like a little bit more. Like there seems to be a sentiment from, the Oklahoma fan base that recognizes what Texas is, right? And it's like, okay, like we're not playing that game, but we've still got the rest of our SEC schedule to go, and we've got to be able to be more competitive than we were in that game. So I don't know what it looks like for the Sooners the rest of the way.
I think that game went like, if you thought Texas was going to cover, that's probably how it was going to look. Ugly for a little bit, but maybe not turning it over and eventually scoring. And I don't think there was really any hope for Oklahoma scoring entering that game, absent turnovers, given that you don't have your top 5 receivers and the offensive line is still a little dinged up. I don't really get that. Like,
and a quarterback making his second start in the biggest rivalry of the game. Like because
favored over South Carolina this weekend.
Right. Dusty was very frustrated, and you could tell like he was, Oklahoma fans are very frustrated. The offense didn't look a little bit better, like you weren't a little bit more competitive. And I was kind of like, what did you expect?
Did you downgrade Oklahoma at all? Because I did not.
No.
I mean,
that's exactly what I expected out of them.
Yeah.
Quick, some math, some stats and facts to back up what was a little bit of a notion, something I wrote about on Saturday and discussed Saturday night on the podcast. There was sort of a phrase that I heard a lot that was, this didn't happen under Saban. The idea that they wouldn't come back and be able to like thrash South Carolina after the Vanderbilt loss and get right. It's like, oh yeah, well, that never happened under Saban. And Danny, you might have heard I credited you. Like you were the one who was out last year and the year before being like, Alabama is playing more 1-score games than they ever did during their peak. Like this already, the dynasty is done. They're still a really good team. They still won 2 SEC championships in the last 3 years. No one's arguing that, but you could see that they were not levels above everyone else. Well, Nick Saban in his career at Alabama, after a straight up loss, just 8-14 against the spread. There are more examples of Alabama coming out of a straight up loss under Nick Saban and failing to meet the odds makers' expectations than there are of them having this tremendous bounce back statement that I think a lot of people imagine. Because everyone, you think about Nick Saban's like, oh, Nick's going to get into their ass this week, and now they're going to come out and they're going to crush him. Well, you know what they did after they lost to Texas last year? They almost lost to South Florida. And do you know what happened after Jaden Daniels ran for 1,000,000 yards on them? They won, but they didn't cover against Ole Miss back in 2022. And there just are more examples than I think your mind wants to realize of the way that Alabama responded to these very rare straight up losses. And so it was almost like not an apology, but just a reminder when we're looking at Kalen DeBoer, as he is absolutely facing an immense amount of pressure to try to be able to deliver results the rest of the way, that this would have never happened under Saban doesn't apply to the way that you play coming off a loss.
I wish you guys could have seen Damian Harris, who does the pregame show with me, former Alabama running back. He was losing his mind because I think in his mind, he's like, we never would have played that way against this team. We would have blown him out. I think even he might not be able to see the truth in that. The other thing that I've seen too, and I think this was, because after Malachi Moore lost it last week and that, clip went viral and everybody's like, Nick Saban wouldn't allow this and this is undisciplined behavior. Several accounts went back and found some receipts with players fighting on the bench, players going after Saban, AJ McCarron going after Barrett Jones, like in a blowout.
Saban screaming at Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. There's all kind of stuff. It's like we have this recollection that, we put people on a pedestal, and I get that it's different, but it's like and I know it's like we're asking people to have some rationale that really don't have any, that don't have much. So I just thought it was very interesting.
I would like to make a plea with our listeners and our viewers. Don't be rational. We rely on you all being insane. We're insane, and we need you to be insane too when it comes to this sport. Thank you.
It still is very, very jarring, though, to hear Kalen DeBoer at halftime, and he is cool, calm, and collected. I mean, he is not upset at all. And in the post game, he is just chill. It is jarring, though, and I get it why Bama fans for the past 15 years have been hearing one message coming from there, and to hear a coach who doesn't seem bothered at all by it, it is pretty jarring.
I mean, if you think about it, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you got to the title game last year playing these games. Like, how many one-score close games was Washington in last season?
9.
He's probably just like, this is what Saturday is supposed to be like, right?
Right. We won.
It's close, it's crazy, and then we win. Isn't that the gig? I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, I wasn't that down on Alabama for this weekend. Like, they legitimately played better quality of football than they played against Vandy.
And it's 14-0. If the minutes before half play out differently,
Right.
which I do think that was the one criticism I had for Kalen DeBoer, was allowing Milroe to throw it 3rd and 18 and they had the interception. Like, why not just run it and get into halftime? Just don't even put him in that position, because he forced the ball down the field, and that was the return when they got the cheap field goal to kind of capture some more momentum before half. Yeah.
So were you rooting for South Carolina, like aggressively in front of Damian, or were you like playing it in the middle, or like, I mean, how
Danny, I don't think Danny would ever do anything like that.
I was going to say, like, how'd you play that one?
So it was actually, I don't know if he'd be mad if I said this. I might have to tell you guys off air.
Yeah.
No, I can tell you because there's context to it. But he was like, now I hope these MFers lose. And he didn't clean it up a little bit, because he was like, they were playing so bad. He wanted to just to have the
to
players
learn the lesson. They
pain.
didn't learn the lesson type stuff.
Yes, he wanted them to. But then he was cheering for them, obviously, to win at the end of the game. It was pretty wild. But yeah, I was just rooting for chaos. That's usually what I root for.
So like when you're like,
Danny was just a sympathetic shoulder. He's like, there, buddy, it's gonna be okay.
I like to
Cardell.
Wow,
Cardell.
look at this.
Cardell had about a 12-way parlay, and so there was one game, some random. I think it was. I forget what game it was. I was rooting for the total to go over, and he's like, "Shut up, man." He was way more mad at me than Damian was over the Bama stuff. It was the 12-leg parlay that had about 10 ways that had to go that were like right on the cusp. And I was one of the bets. I was against him, and he was mad. So I was like, all right, I can be a team player.
There is a market that would watch a camera in that room.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know if I want to open everybody up to that and let everyone. You're already on camera for like 5 hours during that day. Let you have a little bit of time where you're not having to dance for everyone. All right, Bud. Yep.
I was gonna say I would never want to be on camera during the second half of that Illinois Purdue game, because I might get fired.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it is so human that we need to be able to have those moments to react. And I know that that's like a thing in the industry, right? Like the cameras that are, you watch everybody else, like watch everything, capture all the reactions. I get it, but we need to preserve ourselves. We'll come meet you on camera when it's time to go. But UFR, what stands out from the notebook?
So we already talked about Oklahoma, Ohio State's D-line just not getting pressure. I do think like the Josh Simmons thing for Ohio State might be a pretty big deal. Like losing your best offensive lineman, your left tackle, that's just not something that most teams are capable of replacing. I thought Ole Miss, this is kind of a wild disparity. Watching them, I felt like they were getting a lot of pressure on Nussmeier. They had 0 sacks on 51 dropbacks.
I think that's a Nussmeier compliment.
He moved pretty well in the pocket, I thought. Yeah.
I do have to say about Nuss, because I tweeted it on Saturday night, and it's true because I see it all the time. He has a very strong arm, and I wish he trusted it a little less.
Yeah, there's some bad Brett Favre in there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys kind of taken a look at this SEC title race thing? Like Texas is kind of the lock to get there, but I mean, LSU could still get there. A&M could get there. Georgia obviously could get there. Vols could still get there. Bama, like, where do you start drawing the line of teams that are definitely out? Because I like Missouri is still, I think, somewhat live to get there, as crazy as that sounds. And I don't really believe like these Arkansas odds, but I guess in theory, like if they beat LSU this weekend, then you kind of got to take them seriously, right?
I mean, the SEC is just the Big 12 now. I think that's the primary takeaway. I do. It is strange to me that like I didn't think at this point of the year like there'd be 3 undefeated teams in conference play in the SEC. I didn't think they would be Texas, A&M, and LSU. I figured they would be Texas and then one of Bama or Georgia, depending on who won that game, and then maybe LSU or Tennessee. But it's pretty wide open. Like this is a situation where, like you said, I think Texas. I'm gonna have them in Atlanta. I just don't see them losing 2 games, which I think is what it's going to take to knock them out of that picture. But I have legit no idea who this team they're going to be facing there is right now.
Are we looking at wild tiebreaker scenarios?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With that one law, if there are,
So I am, but to answer your question, I don't think that I am finding myself like amazed at all the different teams that are still mathematically involved as much as I am finding myself coming out of week 7 down on so many of those teams that are still mathematically involved, where it's just like my trust level in a lot of these teams to be able to navigate the rest of their path without taking not even just one more loss, maybe even multiple losses is starting to wane. I mean, Tennessee showed you anybody can get Tennessee.
Right.
Ole Miss can be had. LSU, depending on how healthy they're able to get, and depending on sort of where they are, that they're going to be living and dying on coin flips as well. Like when you just have so many of these teams where you're just not as bullish on it. I mean, I'm certainly not going to throw Missouri in the group that I'm ready to saddle up between. And you know what's interesting? The team that I am finding myself in the wake of this weekend the most attracted to is a team that did not play this weekend. Texas A&M. Texas A&M knows what they are. Like Texas A&M has sort of like gone through, and I think that Mike Elko could find himself in the Coach of the Year conversation by the end of this. I think Texas A&M could be in the SEC title game picture, the college football playoff picture, and it is because they are entirely confident in who they are. They're not waiting on anybody to get healthy. They've already gone through the whole quarterback ringer and seem to come out on the other side. I think that we could be looking at the wild tiebreaker scenario of Texas and Texas A&M being in first and second place in the SEC, going into the game that they play at the end of the regular season, and then having to figure out all the different ways that different results could impact that.
They are legitimately in the mix because of the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also think that they're
good.
They're good. I think Texas A&M's good. I think I know this is a shocker. I think that they've gotten better. I think that this is I think they're a well-coached team, and I think that they've gotten better, and it would be a surprise if they don't bring a high level of football to the rest of the schedule, which, as you mentioned, is Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, New Mexico State, Auburn, and then Texas.
I think the Aggies have gotten better for sure. But I don't think they're nearly as good as they were in that Missouri game. I mean, I understand that Wegman was out, but they still are a team that beat Arkansas by 4. They are a team that beat Bowling Green by 6. Like, I don't think that this is – I look at the rest of the schedule. They're going to beat Mississippi State. I don't think Mississippi State's winning a game for the rest of the season. Oh, no, wait. They'll win the Egg Bowl. But, like, I could easily see the Aggies losing at home to LSU. I could see them losing to Texas. I could see them losing at South Carolina. I don't put them on that status yet where I just look at them and be like, oh, even with that schedule, it's kind of like the Ole Miss thing. Yeah, the schedule's easy, but they're also a team capable of losing some of those games.
And you want to make sure that Wegman can do this again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On the road, too.
Who do you have?
Coming as the other team? It really is tight.
It depends what happens in that Texas-Georgia game. If Georgia wins, it'll be Texas and Georgia. Yeah. If Georgia loses, buddy, I have no idea.
What do you think, Danny?
Man.
Vandy.
Yeah.
I think
if I had to put money on one, I'd probably say Georgia. But it does hinge on a lot. I still think we're going to see some more chaos. I think we're all under the assumption it's going to be a one-loss team, or I think I think there's going to be some of these teams will knock them off.
I mean, Tennessee, Bama this week is like an elimination game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not mathematically, but it really puts it takes air out of the tires of the loser for sure.
So just like it did with Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Losing to LSU.
Hell, you know what? No, it's because of the tiebreakers wouldn't happen, but it would be. Then they're going to lose to Georgia too, probably. But it would be funny if like Ole Miss finishes 6-2 and then gets in the tiebreaker anyway.
Well, how would that happen?
It won't. They would have to beat Georgia.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Probably not.
All right, so if we still think there's chaos, you think Texas is going to be on the wrong end of chaos? If Texas loses to Georgia, that's not chaos. That's Georgia went into their house and beat them. Do you think that has Texas shown you enough through 6 games that Texas making the SEC title game, you feel confident saying that is a lock?
I just feel like Texas is the most complete team I've seen this year.
Lock is strong. I mean, I'd be surprised if they don't make it. I think they're a lot better than a coin flip, but lock is still strong.
Yeah, like they could lose once. I just don't see them losing twice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Everybody recognizes that at Vandy is going to be the
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That game.
Get game day there or one of this pregame. Like that's what they should do.
Get Danny there.
Are they one of the schools that has never hosted? As if they're not, it might be.
Oh,
might be the year.
Okay. Let's see. Anything else for upon further review?
Did you guys hit on? I didn't hear. Did you guys hit on Utah, Arizona State? Utah may just not be that good. And then Cam Rising. I mean, I know he had his fourth game. That was not him.
No,
they can't score.
Did it look like him?
No, it didn't.
No, it did not.
Looked like an actor portraying a quarterback in a movie. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
They may just not be that good either. Like when I say not good, just 9-3, 8-4 territory.
Well, here's the thing:
compared to their standard.
Yeah, like last year, our line was, they lost 1 million players to injuries. We saw what the floor is for a Kyle Whittingham program, and the floor is still 8-4. You're coming out of this weekend, the loss to Arizona State, you're totally reeling. But then I started looking at, who Utah has left to play, and there's like, well, that still looks like it's going to be an 8-4 season. So I think that's why to your comment, if for their standard is important, because Utah is good enough to still go out there and be 8-4. I just don't think. They were just the preseason pick to win the Big 12, and they can't score touchdowns in the red zone. Cam Rising is back and he's throwing a bunch of picks. So they're clearly not the team that you trust to go and beat BYU and Iowa State, but they could beat BYU and Iowa State and definitely flip this season around here in the next month or so.
Bud's got to go.
Oh, okay. All right. Here's a little note. So here's a list of power conference teams that are ranked outside of the top 75 in this morning's brand new CBS Sports 134. I picked up on a little trend, and this is in reverse order. Purdue, UCLA, Mississippi State, Wake Forest, Florida State, Kansas, Stanford, NC State, Houston, Baylor, North Carolina.
All doormat programs.
The AP Top 25 preseason college basketball poll is being released today. And I think about 7 of those programs that are among the worst in the CBS Sports 134 will find themselves receiving votes, if not near the tops. Kansas, Houston, Baylor, North Carolina, Purdue, UCLA. I was doing.
I hear a lot of ACC Big 12 too, which of basketball clearly is there, but that is not great for the ACC or Big 12.
And just to drive it home, by the way, UConn ranked right up one spot above UNC. So throw UConn in there. That's some of the lowest ranked power conference teams in college football, according to the CBS Sports 134. UConn, North Carolina, Baylor, Houston, NC State, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue.
Listen, I know this is a foreign concept to you too, but some schools can do both.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That Illinois love right there. Let's go.
Illinois, Iowa State, just all these real schools with real athletic programs.
Danny, yeah.
No, I just saw because the news crossed. I think I don't think it's a shock to anybody because the expectation was that Graham Mertz probably was going to be done. I think it's official that his season is over. Which I do see a lot of Florida fans saying, "Hey, thanks for what you did." He was really, a solid addition for them at a time when the program is struggling. But I am excited to see what DJ does because I thought he played pretty well, and I think this is one of the advantages of doing the 2 quarterback deal. And playing him so many reps, it's not like he doesn't have much experience now. And again, he handled himself, great on the road in Knoxville in that game, made a couple big throws. So I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do for the Gators. Still got to go for 2 there on the road. You're the underdog. Season's like your job security is on the what do you have to lose? Just go for it, man.
Josh Heupel left the door open. Josh Heupel he's trying to save jobs. He's trying to save Sam Pittman's job. He tried to save Billy Napier's job. That is somebody who is a saint in the coaching community.
That's coaching solidarity. That's brotherhood. That's fraternity.
Tom, you got anything else before we start to turn our attention to week 8?
No, not that we haven't kind of already hit the topic of. No.
All right, sweet.
Oh, I will say one thing. There's one thing. Oregon, huge win last week. Beat Ohio State, obviously. Short week, ranked number 2 on Friday night at Purdue.
A resurgent Purdue.
I have seen this story play out. We have seen Washington get sucked into the Big Ten muck. We have seen UCLA and USC get sucked into the Big Ten muck. We have not yet seen Oregon get sucked into the Big Ten muck, but it comes for us all. You're at West Lafayette on a Friday night coming off the biggest win in program history. Buckle up.
Plus 1,600 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more on the wouldn't it be hilarious play of the season so far if the spoiler makers take down Oregon on Friday night. Oh, buddy.
It's happened plenty of times before.
I 100% agree. It's there. It's there. All right. I'll tell you what's here. What's here is a busy week ahead on the Cover 3 podcast. On Tuesday, we're going to be back on CBS Sports Network. You can watch us live at 2 p.m. Eastern time. You can catch the show on demand on youtube.com/cover3 or on the podcast feed. Then we're back here on youtube.com/cover3 live at 11 a.m. Eastern time for Big Game Breakdown. Be giving you what you need to know going into that Georgia-Texas game, going into that Alabama-Tennessee game, and so much more. Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we're here for the locks and so much more. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Danny Kanell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Eyeball emoji.